So if you wanted to bring in a series of hand-drawn images, let's say things you had drawn on like a tablet in a different program like Procreate or something like that, and you just kind of did your frame by frame animation that way, or you drew it on pieces of paper and you would kind of scan or photograph those, how might you bring those in? It's a lot like the stop motion technique, but it's just got a few like just little differences in there that you might want to think about. So the main thing would just be to go ahead and open up your Photoshop sort of file, get it all set up the way you want it to, and make sure the timeline is up. So remember that's here under Window Timeline. So if you don't see it, you can always go here and click back on it. And then we're going to want to use some of the automated things that Photoshop has in it to bring in those files. So the hand-drawn things. So you want to make sure you stash them. You want, if you can, you want to try to label them like in a rational way, like 1 through 30 or however many you have. Otherwise it can get very confusing. But you can go ahead now and once you've got those stashed in a folder someplace so that you can find, you want to go to File, and then you want to go over here to Scripts, and you want to go to this one that's called Load Files into Stack. So you want to grab that, and it's going to ask you, well, where are these files that you want to bring in? So you can click there, and then you can go to your, wherever you've got your things stashed. Go in here. I got mine in this folder. Then you just want to shift click. So you want to shift click all of those. Make sure they're all highlighted and click open, and that'll bring them in here into this list. And then it's going to ask you some things like attempt to automatically align the source images and create smart objects. I would leave that alone unless you really know what you're doing. Don't mess with that. Just leave it be. And then you want to just go ahead and click OK. Now it's going to process for a minute depending on how fast or slow your computer is. But again, if you look at it now, you'll see that, basically if I click through these, it's a series of, images that I drew by hand on a tablet of this guy kind of freaking out over what he's seeing on his phone, right? Which I'm sure we've all done from time to time. So those are all in there as still like static images. They're all just stacked up all by themselves. Really straightforward, kind of easy thing to do. Again, you could draw each layer by hand if you wanted to, one at a time, even in Photoshop, and then just do the same thing that I'm going to show you now. So once you're done with that, then you can go ahead and go and get it all in there. You can go ahead and go over here to our kind of hamburger thing, right? And just check the options that we have here, which it looks like everything is in good order there. And so I'm going to go ahead and just, yours might say create video timeline. You want to go ahead and say create frame animation. And that'll give you this single image here that's like that you could keep adding like photos to, right? But so we didn't really get all of these put in there as frames yet, but we're gonna. Now if we click on the hamburger down here, you can see there's an option here that says make frames from layers. So that's going to take each one of these layers that we have over here. It's going to make it into a frame down here on the timeline. So if I click that, now I've got them all in there. And now if I push the play button there, you'll see that, this guy's kind of freaking out. He's doing some pretty big jumps in space, right? So maybe that's not quite what I wanted. But he, all the steps that I drew by hand are in there. And so you can see I can, you can see as they go through. So now if there's some problems with this, I could go in here and edit them. You have to remember that like all of your steps along this path, again, you can control these here by just one frame forward, one frame back, and going this way. You can definitely, like if you find a blank one, like I got a blank one here, I don't know what's going on there. I'm just gonna hit the garbage can, and that'll get rid of that frame, right? And so now if I go forward, hopefully these are all correct, right? So yeah, so this one's a little bit like faded out for some reason, so I might want to go back and I could select that frame and delete that frame out of there. So we'll see if that helps a little bit. Nope. Oh, I'm all the way back to the beginning, my bad. So there you go. So it's kind of giving you like some options, right, of things that you can kind of do. So, but let's say that I wanted to add something more to this now, like some colors or something like that. I can always, again, click on the frame, and you have to remember all the frame is doing is it's saying, okay, right now in the timeline, I'm showing you whichever one of these layers is highlighted or has the eyeball next to it. So this is the layer that's visible, and and I'm basically, and it's saying, okay, I'm going to show you that layer at that moment. And then when I click to the next one, you can see the eyeball moves up, right? And so if I wanted to go in here and add some more stuff to try to fix this a little bit, I could make sure I have frame 5 selected, and I have this layer selected, and then I could go in here with like my brush, and you know, if I needed to, I can make the brush smaller, but I could try to like, oh sorry, my bad. I meant to be the clone stamp, but I have, or I meant to be the brush, but I had the clone stamp. So grab that, make the brush a little smaller by hitting the square brackets down, and then I could go in there and draw on that, which that looks bad. I would probably want to really make the size of this a lot smaller and see how that looks, right? There you go. So now I could add a few things if I needed to, you know, you could certainly add colors. You can draw basically on each frame on top of it now. So this is all happening on top of whatever I had on there already. So if I go back a step, you know, that's there, and I go forward now. I could go to this one. I could select this frame, and I could add things, right? So, you know, really very simple kind of basic things that you can kind of do here now. But if I push play on this, you know, eventually you'll get to the point where those little flashes show up. So, and then I can also change duration. So if I really wanted that that scene there that I just made with these to be there longer, I can click where it says 0 seconds, and I could go like a half a second. So it'll just make that frame a half a second now. So if I go back to the beginning and push play, it'll hold that for a second, and then it'll start. So you can mess with the timings of each one of these things if you want to as well. So that's some like really basic kind of how-to Photoshop kinds of things that you can play with to do hand-drawn animations and bring in your files and stack them on top of each other.